The sound of a baby crying should not be terrifying, but on Park Jisu's jet, it was a death sentence waiting to happen. The piercing wails echoed through the luxury cabin, each scream sharper than the last, cutting through the mechanical hum of engines like a blade through silk. Rain lashed against the windows at 35,000 feet. The storm outside, nothing compared to the chaos within. Park Jisu paced the length of the cabin, his expensive Tom Ford suit disheveled, tie loosened, jaw clenched so tight it could shatter diamonds. This was a man who'd ordered executions with a whisper, who'd built an empire on fear and blood, now reduced to helplessness by a 3-month-old infant who wouldn't stop crying. His bodyguards lined the walls like statues, their discomfort palpable. They'd watched him break fingers without flinching, seen him walk away from burning buildings. But this unmade him. The great Park Jisu, head of Seoul's Black Serpent Syndicate, was being destroyed by his own son. Where is she? Jisu's voice was lethal calm. Where's the wet nurse? Vanished, sir, Sukman replied, his hand hovering near his concealed weapon. 2 hours before departure, the doctor couldn't calm him either. He left. Taehyun's cries grew weaker, more desperate. Dehydration was setting in. Jisu lifted his son with trembling hands, and the scent of gunpowder mixed with the baby's powder created a nauseating contrast. I've killed for less than this noise, he thought, pressing his lips to Taehyun's burning forehead. But this, I cannot silence. At the back of the cabin, hidden in the corner shadows, Kimi Adebayo watched. She'd been trying to stay invisible since realizing whose plane she was on, her heart hammering against her ribs. She clutched her medical conference badge like a talisman, praying he wouldn't notice her. But the baby's weakening cries pierced through every instinct for self-preservation. Her body responded before her mind could stop it. That familiar ache in her chest, the one that had haunted her for 6 months. The baby needed help, and God help her, she could provide it. Kimi stood, her legs moving before her mind agreed. Sir, she said, her Nigerian accent cutting through the chaos like a lifeline. I'm a nurse. Let me see him. Every head in the cabin turned toward her. Jisu's eyes, dark, dangerous, desperate, locked onto hers. If you're enjoying this already, hit that like button and subscribe because what happens next will shock you. Also, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming. The silence that followed Kimi's words felt heavier than the storm raging outside. Jisu studied her with the intensity of a predator assessing prey, or perhaps a drowning man considering a rope. His gaze traveled from her worn sneakers to her conference lanyard, lingering on the medical credentials printed there. Kimi Adebayo, neonatal specialist, Lagos University Teaching Hospital. A nurse, he repeated, his voice void of emotion. On my jet. How convenient. Sukman stepped forward, his hand now fully on his weapon. Boss, we didn't authorize any medical personnel for this flight. I was rerouted. Kimi interrupted, forcing steadiness into her voice, even as her knees threatened to buckle. My commercial flight from Seoul was canceled due to the storm. Emergency passenger clearance. I didn't know. She swallowed hard. I didn't know whose plane this was. Liar, her conscience whispered. You knew the moment you saw the serpent insignia on the cabin wall. You just hoped he wouldn't notice you. Taehyun's cries dissolved into weak hiccups. The sound of a baby whose body was giving up. Kimi's chest tightened. She knew that sound. She'd heard it 6 months ago in a delivery room in Lagos when her own son. No, she couldn't think about that now. Please, she said, meeting Jisu's lethal gaze. He's dehydrating. Let me examine him. Something flickered across the Mafia boss's face. Surprise perhaps that someone dared plead with him, that someone looked at him without fear, only urgency. He glanced down at Taehyun, whose tiny face was flushed and tear-stained. Then back at Kimi. If you harm him, Jisu said quietly, I'll kill you before we land. Do you understand? He moved toward her, and Kimi fought every instinct to retreat. Up close, Park Jisu was more terrifying than the news report suggested. Scars traced his knuckles. His presence filled the space like smoke, suffocating and inescapable. But his hands, as he transferred Taehyun to her arms, were gentle. The moment the baby touched her chest, something shifted. Taehyun's crying softened. His tiny fist gripped her scrubs, the ones she'd forgotten to change out of after her morning hospital visit in Seoul. Medical instinct took over. Kimi checked his fontanelle, his skin elasticity, his lips. He's severely dehydrated. She murmured more to herself than anyone else. Formula rejection, probably lactose intolerance, or she paused, noticing the rash on his neck, or the formula was tampered with. Jisu's expression turned to ice. This pattern, I've seen it before. Someone added something to his formula. Not enough to kill him outright, but enough to make him reject feeding. Kemi looked up, meeting his eyes. Your wet nurse didn't just vanish. She sabotaged him first. Sukmin cursed in Korean. Jisu said nothing, but his jaw worked, rage simmering beneath his controlled exterior. Can you fix it? He asked. Kemi's voice was steady despite her terror. He needs clean formula, oral rehydration solution, and she hesitated. And he needs to eat. Soon. Then feed him. I can't. Not with formula. Not after what they did to him. His stomach won't accept it for hours, maybe days. She met his eyes, knowing what she was about to say would change everything. He needs breast milk. Fresh, clean, from someone he trusts. The cabin went silent except for Taehyun's weakening whimpers. There's no wet nurse, Jisu said flatly. No, Kemi replied, her heart hammering. But there's me. You've been seen with me. Miss Adebayo, photographed boarding my jet. By now, every rival syndicate from Seoul to Sicily knows your face. That's not my problem. It is now. His tone dropped to something dangerous. The people who poison my son will come for anyone they think can get to him. That includes you. Sukmin appeared at her side, his presence more guard than guide. This way, Miss Adebayo. She wanted to argue, to run, to demand her rights. But the weight of Taehyun in her arms, and the memory of that crumpled photo in Jisu's fist kept her silent. Something had shifted after he'd seen her brother's picture. Something cold and calculating had entered his eyes. The safe house was a fortress disguised as luxury, a penthouse overlooking Lake Geneva, all bulletproof glass and hidden security systems. Kemi was given a room next to the nursery decorated in soft creams and whites, beautiful and utterly impersonal. Your passport, Sukmin said, extending his hand for safekeeping. You mean for keeping me prisoner? Call it what you like. His expression held no sympathy. But you're not leaving until boss says otherwise. The door closed, the lock clicked. Kemi sank onto the bed, Taehyun still sleeping against her chest, and tried not to panic. 5 days bled together. Kemi fell into a routine she hadn't asked for, but couldn't escape. She woke when Taehyun cried, fed him, changed him, sang to him. The baby thrived under her care, growing stronger, his smiles becoming more frequent. And every time she nursed him, Jisu appeared in the doorway, watching, silent, his expression unreadable. On the third night, she found her voice. Why do you do this? The violence. He stood in the shadows of the nursery, his suit jacket discarded, looking almost human. Because mercy is a luxury I can't afford. Your son deserves a father who can. His jaw tightened. My son deserves to live. In my world, that requires strength, fear, control. In my world, Kemi countered softly. It requires love. He had no answer for that. By the 5th night, something shifted. Kemi awoke to the sound of singing Korean words she didn't understand, but the melody was achingly tender. She found Jisu in the nursery, holding Taehyun against his chest, singing a lullaby that must have come from his own childhood. She stood in the doorway, watching the feared black serpent reduced to gentleness by his son. Oh, me? She sang softly, joining him. Jisu's singing stopped. He looked up, and their eyes met in the dim light. Kemi approached, and together they adjusted Taehyun's blanket. Their hands touched just a brush of skin, but it sent electricity through both of them. You remind me of her, Jisu whispered. My wife, but different, stronger. Kemi pulled back, suddenly aware of how dangerous this was. This intimacy, this connection. I'm not here to replace anyone. I know, but the way he looked at her suggested he wished otherwise. The next morning, everything changed. Kemi woke to find a manila folder slipped under her door. Inside were photographs, surveillance shots, police reports. Her hands shook as she recognized faces from her past. Her brother, Tun Adebayo, alive and smiling in photos dated years before his death. The final photo stole her breath. Tun's body crumpled in an alley, blood pooling beneath him. The date stamp read exactly 2 years, 3 months, and 14 days ago, the day her world had shattered. He wasn't a random victim, she whispered to the empty room. He was one of them. Kemi spun. Jisoo stood in the doorway, his expression carved from stone. You killed him. The words tore from her throat as she lunged forward, the files scattering. My brother, you murdered him. He chose his side. Jisoo's voice was cold. Clinical. The Choi family. He was trying to pay for my medical school. Kemi's voice cracked. He sent money every month. He was 23 years old and trying to give me a future. And you? He worked for the Choi. He knew the risks. He was good. He was. Her legs gave out. She caught herself against the desk. Photographs of her dead brother scattered at her feet. He wasn't a criminal. He was desperate. Something flickered in Jisoo's eyes. He moved closer, each step deliberate. Your brother was a good man trapped in a bad situation. I didn't kill him, Kemi, but I didn't save him either. The confession hit harder than violence would have. What does that mean? Her voice was barely a whisper. Jisoo's jaw tightened. He came to me 2 days before they killed him. He wanted out. Offered to give me information about Choi operations in exchange for safe passage out of Korea. His eyes closed briefly, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of old guilt. I walked away. If I'd intervened, protected him, it would have started a war. Hundreds would have died in the crossfire. So, you sacrificed one to save many. Kemi's laugh was bitter, broken. How noble. There's nothing noble about what I do. And now, I've been here caring for your son, feeding him from my body. The realization crashed over her like ice water. Did you know? When I stepped forward on that plane, did you know who I was? His answer was immediate. Not until I saw his photo, then I confirmed it. And you said nothing. She moved toward the door, but he blocked her path. Let me go? You walk out that door. The Choi will kill you. They know who you are now. They've known since Geneva. Better dead than here with you. From the nursery, Taehyun's cry pierced the air. Sharp, desperate, searching for her. The sound froze them both. Kemi's body responded instinctively, milk letting down, her arms aching to reach for him. Don't, she whispered, but she didn't know if she was talking to Jisoo or herself. I lost my baby. The confession ripped from her. 6 months ago, stillbirth. I held him, and he was perfect, and he was dead, and I couldn't. She pressed her hands to her chest. I lost my brother. I can't lose myself, too. Jisoo's carefully constructed walls cracked. My wife didn't die in childbirth. She was murdered by the Choi because I refused to give them territory. They killed her to break me. His voice dropped to something raw. Taehyun is all I have, and you brought him back to life. You brought me back. Kemi shook her head. Don't make this about. I can't undo what I've done. But I can protect you now. Protection. Her laugh was hollow. You mean prison. Call it what you want, but you're not leaving. Taehyun's cries intensified. Kemi moved toward the door, but Jisoo caught her wrist, not hard, but firm enough to stop her. Please, she whispered. He needs. A phone rang, shrill and urgent. Sukmin burst into the room, his face ashen. Boss, the Choi know about her. They've sent proof surveillance of her family in Lagos. He held up his phone, showing a video of Kemi's mother walking to market. Red laser dots tracking her movements. They're demanding we hand her over, or they take Taehyun. The room went silent except for the baby's cries. Jisoo's grip on Kemi's wrist tightened, then released. Get her out of here, he said quietly. Secondary location now. Kemi's voice was steady despite her terror. I won't leave him. You don't have a choice. Jisoo's face was a mask again, the brief vulnerability gone. Sukmin, take her now. She reached for Taehyun's cries, but Sukmin was already pulling her toward the corridor. Please don't do this. In the nursery, Taehyun's screams intensified. She could hear him choking on his tears, could feel her body responding, milk soaking through her shirt. The baby reached toward the doorway where she disappeared, his tiny fists grasping at nothing. It's safer for everyone, Jisoo said, but he wouldn't look at her. The last thing Kemi saw before Sukmin forced her into the SUV was Taehyun's face, red and desperate, calling for someone who couldn't come. The secondary safe house was a cabin 2 hours into the Swiss Alps. Isolated, fortified, suffocating. Guards rotated shifts outside, but inside Kemi was utterly alone. I survived loss before, she thought, staring at the mountains through bulletproof glass. But this is different. She'd lost her son to fate, lost her brother to violence. But this, being torn from Taehyun, from the baby who'd become hers in every way that mattered, this was a choice. Jisoo's choice. And the worst part, She understood it. Worse than that, she loved the baby. Had fallen impossibly, stupidly in love with a mafia boss who'd let her brother die. Tund would hate me, she whispered to the empty room. God, he would hate what I've become. In Geneva, Jisoo was breaking. Taehyun wouldn't eat. Every bottle was rejected. Every formula refused. 3 different nurses tried. He screamed harder for each one. Doctors were called. Tests run. Everything came back normal. He's not sick, boss, Sukmin said carefully, watching his leader pace the nursery like a caged animal. He misses her. Then find someone else, someone he'll accept. There is no one else. Jisoo sank into the chair where Kemi used to sit, Taehyun rigid and screaming in his arms. He tried the Korean lullabies. The baby cried harder. He tried rocking, pacing, begging. Nothing worked. At 3 a.m., alone in the nursery with his inconsolable son, Park Jisoo, who'd executed men without hesitation, who'd built an empire on fear, wept. I'm sorry, he whispered against Taehyun's hair. I'm so sorry. I've become what I swore to destroy. I'm holding hostages just like they did to me. The message from the Choi arrived at dawn. A video. Kemi's mother walking to church. Her younger sister leaving for school. Red dots tracked them both. The text was simple. 24 hours. The nurse or everyone she loves dies. Then we come for your son. Sukmin watched his boss's face carefully. We have to give her up. We can find another caregiver. We can. No, boss. Jisoo's voice was final. Prepare the men. We're going to war. In the Alpine cabin, Kemi found it while searching for anything to occupy her mind. A journal hidden behind a loose stone in the fireplace. The handwriting was elegant, feminine. The name on the first page, Hygiene Park. Kemi should have closed it. Instead, she read. Entry after entry revealed a woman who'd loved fiercely, who'd known exactly what her husband was and chosen him anyway, who'd understood the darkness and found light within it. The final entry dated 3 days before Hyjin's death. I know they're coming for me. Jisoo thinks I don't see the signs, but I do. The Choi won't stop until they've taken everything from him. But here's what they don't understand. He cannot change who he is. And I love him anyway. Violence is in his blood, but so is loyalty. So is love. If I die, someone tell him this. Find someone who can love our son without fear. Someone brave enough to see the man beneath the monster. Someone strong enough to survive our world and still choose softness. Tell him I hope he finds her. Tell him I forgive him for everything. Tell him. The entry ended abruptly. Kemi's tears fell onto the page, smudging ink that was 2 years old. She knew, Kemi whispered. She knew someone like me would come. They're drawing you out. Then let them try. Jisoo checked his weapon, his eyes cold fire. No one touches her. The drive to the Alps was a blur of strategy and suppressed panic. Taehyun had cried the entire time, sensing his father's fear. When they arrived, the cabin was engulfed in gunfire. Jisoo moved like a force of nature, tactical, lethal, unstoppable. His men formed a perimeter while he breached the cabin, taking down Choi soldiers with surgical precision. He found Kemi in the upstairs bedroom, a bloodied lamp in her hands, standing over an unconscious attacker. A gash split her eyebrow, blood streaking her face. Their eyes met. Everything unspoken between them crystallized in that moment. Forgiveness, understanding, something that looked dangerously like love. I'm sorry, Jisoo said, for everything. Kemi dropped the lamp, exhausted, swaying. Shut up and get me to your son. Back at the penthouse, Kemi nursed Taehyun while Jisoo's team filled the war room. For the first time, she was included, seated at the table, holding the baby, while men who'd once viewed her as a liability now listened when she spoke. The Choi's real target isn't the baby, Sukmin said, spreading surveillance photos. It's you, boss. They want you desperate enough to make mistakes. Then don't be desperate, Kemi said quietly. Be smart. All eyes turned to her. I still have contacts from the Seoul Medical Conference. I can reach out to the Choi. Tell them I escaped, that you're holding my family hostage to keep me quiet. Feed them false information about your location. He studied. That puts you directly in their crosshairs. I'm already there. She met his gaze steadily. Let's use it. They worked through the night planning. Jisoo brought her tea, chamomile, the way she liked it. A small gesture that meant everything. Why are you being kind now? She asked softly. Because I should have been from the start. The space between them charged with electricity. He leaned closer, and she didn't pull away. Their lips were inches apart when Taehyun whimpered, breaking the spell. They laughed. Awkward, genuine, human. Tomorrow, Jisoo said, his hand finding hers. We end this. The warehouse was perfect, abandoned, isolated, exactly where a desperate man might hide. Kimmy had played her part flawlessly, contacting the Choi through encrypted medical channels, her voice trembling with false fear as she fed them coordinates. He's planning to run, she'd whispered into the phone. Tonight, he'll be vulnerable. They'd taken the bait. Now, as Lee Hyun-woo's convoy surrounded the building, Jisoo's team waited in the shadows. Every exit covered, every angle calculated. The hunter had become the hunted. Hyun-woo entered with 20 men, their weapons drawn. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Gunfire, smoke grenades, tactical warfare that turned the space into a hellscape. Jisoo moved through it like a ghost, taking down enemies with cold efficiency. But Hyun-woo was smart. He'd brought double the expected forces, and within minutes, Jisoo found himself cornered, his back against a concrete pillar. Hyun-woo's gun aimed at his heart. You really thought I'd fall for such an obvious trap? Hyun-woo laughed. I knew the nurse was lying the moment she called. But I came anyway, because killing you in front of her will be so much sweeter. She's not here, Jisoo said. Isn't she? Kimmy stepped from the shadows, hands raised. She'd hidden a tracking device in Jisoo's jacket using surgical tape. Had followed despite explicit orders to stay behind with Taehyun and Sukmin. Let him go, she said. Hyun-woo's smile was venomous. How touching. Did he tell you the truth about your brother? That Tunda Adebayo wasn't just a courier. He was my informant. He was going to help us destroy the Black Serpents, testify against Park Jisoo in international court until this monster figured it out. Jisoo's face showed genuine shock. You're lying. Ask her. Kimmy's voice was steady. It's true. Tun was going to testify against you. The Choi promised him witness protection. Enough money to pay for my medical school and get us both out of Korea. She took a breath. But then Tun discovered what the Choi were really doing. The trafficking rings, the children they were selling. He learned that you'd been secretly dismantling those operations, saving kids that no one else cared about. He came to you not to gather evidence, but to warn you, to help you. And when the Choi found out he'd switched sides, we made an example of him, Hyun-woo finished coldly. He tossed a gun at Kimmy's feet. So here's your choice, nurse. Kill Park Jisoo, and I'll call off my men in Lagos. Your mother, your sister, they live. Refuse, and they die tonight. Then I'll kill you both and take that baby. Kimmy picked up the gun. Her hands didn't shake. Jisoo closed his eyes, acceptance washing over his features. If it gives you peace, do it. My brother, Kimmy said quietly, died because he chose right over easy. She turned and shot Hyun-woo in the shoulder. The warehouse exploded into motion. Jisoo moved instantly, disarming the nearest guard while his team burst from concealment. Sukmin secured Hyun-woo as he writhed on the ground screaming. Within minutes, it was over. Sirens wailed in the distance. Jisoo pulled Kimmy behind cover as Swiss authorities swarmed the building. An anonymous tip had brought them perfectly timed. I gave them everything, Jisoo said against her hair. The Choi files, their trafficking operations, but I gave them mine, too. The Black Serpents end with me. What does that mean? Kimmy pulled back, searching his face. It means I'm done. I'm willing to face arrest if it means Taehyun grows up clean. Away from all of this. Kimmy reached into her jacket, pulled out a flash drive. Then you'll need this. 6 months of research. Every person you saved from trafficking. Every child you protected. Every time you chose mercy when you could have chosen violence. She pressed it into his hand. You're not the monster you think you are. Their foreheads touched, both of them bloodied, both of them free. We're going home, she whispered. 6 months later, the morning sun spilled through the Seoul apartment windows. Not a fortress, not a safe house, but a home. Real curtains instead of bulletproof glass. Children's toys scattered across the living room floor. The smell of coffee and something burning. You're doing it wrong, Kimmy called from the nursery, laughing as smoke billowed from the kitchen. I'm trying. Jisoo's voice carried equal parts frustration and amusement. He traded his tailored suits for jeans and t-shirts, his weapon for a spatula, his empire for a legitimate security consulting firm that actually helped people. Taehyun babbled from his high chair, clapping his hands at the chaos. At 10 months old, he was thriving, healthy, happy, calling Kemi mama in broken syllables that made her cry every single time. She worked at Seoul Medical Center now legally, proudly. Her visa had been expedited through Jisoo's testimony against multiple syndicates. He'd given the authorities everything and in exchange received immunity and a chance at redemption. They weren't officially together. Not yet. They were taking it slow, rebuilding trust one day at a time. But the love between them was undeniable, growing in the quiet moments between feeding schedules and bedtime stories. "Dinner's ready," Jisoo announced, carrying a plate of thoroughly blackened something. Kemi bit her lip to keep from laughing. "What is it?" "Jollof rice. I watched 3 YouTube videos." "That's not jollof rice. That's a crime against Nigeria." They dissolved into laughter and Taehyun joined in, his giggles infectious. After dinner, takeout because the jollof was unsalvageable. Jisoo handed Kemi a folder. His hands trembled slightly. "What is this?" she asked. "Open it." Adoption papers, legal, official, making her Taehyun's mother in every way that mattered. Kemi's vision blurred with tears. "You're serious? I want us to be a real family." His voice was raw with hope. "However long that takes, whatever that looks like, I know I don't deserve." She kissed him. Finally, fully, after months of almost touches and held-back feelings, Taehyun squealed with delight, clapping his tiny hands. "Maybe you don't deserve this," Kemi whispered against his lips. "But he does, and maybe. So do I." Later, while Jisoo put Taehyun to bed, Kemi video called Lagos. Her mother's face filled the screen, warm and worried as always. "When are you coming home, Kemi?" Kemi looked toward the nursery where Jisoo was singing, a blend of Korean and Yoruba, their lives intertwined in melody. She watched him kiss their son's forehead, watched him smile at her through the doorway with eyes that had learned gentleness. "I am home, Mama." Her mother's knowing smile said everything. That night, after Taehyun was asleep and the city lights flickered like stars, Kemi stood on the balcony. Jisoo joined her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "Do you ever regret it?" That night on the plane, Kemi thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, broken, grieving, lost. She thought about the baby who'd called her back to life, and the man who'd shown her that monsters could learn to be human. "No," she said simply. "Not once." Some love stories begin with a smile, others with a song. Theirs began with a cry in the darkness, and a stranger brave enough to answer. In the end, she didn't just save his son, she saved them all. What do you think about this love story? Share your thoughts in the comments and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. 2 years had passed since that night in the warehouse when everything changed. The morning sun filtered through the windows of their Seoul apartment, casting golden light across the breakfast table where Taehyun, now 2.5 years old, was carefully arranging his cereal into perfect rows. His dark hair fell into his eyes as he concentrated, speaking a mixture of Korean and English that made both his parents smile. "Appa, look," he announced proudly, showing off his organized breakfast. "Very good, buddy," Jisoo replied, ruffling his son's hair. He wore a simple button-down shirt and jeans, the expensive suits of his past life replaced by the comfortable uniform of a legitimate businessman. His security consulting firm had grown beyond his expectations, helping corporations protect their employees and assets through legal means. Kemi emerged from the bedroom, her nursing scrubs crisp and ready for another day at Seoul Medical Center. She'd completed her residency and was now working in the pediatric intensive care unit, her gentle touch and multilingual skills making her invaluable to the diverse families who sought treatment there. "How's my favorite patient this morning?" she asked, kissing Taehyun's forehead before moving to Jisoo. Their kiss was warm, familiar, the kind shared by people who'd built something real together. They'd married 6 months ago in a small ceremony attended only by their chosen family. Sukmin had walked Kemi down the aisle since her father couldn't travel from Nigeria. Wonbin and Soyeon had served as witnesses, their own relationship having blossomed during the quiet reconstruction of their lives. "Mama, daycare today," Taehyun announced, climbing down from his chair to gather his backpack. "That's right, baby. Miss Chun is waiting for you." The little boy had adapted beautifully to their normal life. He attended a progressive international daycare, where his bilingual abilities were celebrated rather than seen as unusual. Most importantly, he was safe, surrounded by love, completely unaware of the darkness that had once threatened to consume his family. Jisu's phone buzzed with a text from Sukman. Office meeting at 9. New client wants full corporate security assessment. Big one, Jisu asked, reading over his shoulder. International pharmaceutical company. They're expanding into emerging markets and need threat assessment protocols. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Jisu now protected the very type of businesses his old organization might have targeted. His inside knowledge of criminal operations made him uniquely qualified to anticipate and prevent the kinds of attacks he'd once orchestrated. After dropping Taehyun at daycare, they drove to their respective jobs in comfortable silence. The normalcy of it still amazed Kimmy sometimes. Traffic jams and coffee runs and parent-teacher conferences. The mundane miracle of a life lived in daylight. At the hospital, Dr. Sarah Kim greeted her with urgent news. We have a situation in the PICU. 3 children brought in overnight, all showing signs of severe malnutrition and dehydration. Social services is involved, but the children don't speak Korean or English. What languages? Kimmy asked, already reaching for her stethoscope. That's the problem. We think it's a West African dialect, but we can't be sure. They're terrified, won't let anyone touch them. We need someone who can communicate, gain their trust. Kimmy's blood ran cold. West African children, malnourished, frightened, unable to communicate with authorities. The pattern was too familiar, too close to the trafficking operations that had once destroyed so many lives. Where did they find them? Abandoned warehouse in Gangnam district. Anonymous tip to police. No adults present, no identification, no record of how they got into the country. The children were huddled together in the pediatric ward, 3 small forms dwarfed by hospital beds. The oldest couldn't have been more than 8, the youngest barely 4. Their eyes held the hollow look Kimmy recognized from her own past, from refugee camps and places where hope went to die. She approached slowly, speaking first in English, then switching to Yoruba. The middle child, a girl of about 6, looked up sharply at the familiar sounds. My name is Kimmy, she said gently in Yoruba. I'm a nurse. I want to help you. Can you tell me your name? The girl's eyes filled with tears. Adana, she whispered. That's a beautiful name. These are your brothers. She nodded. Chaik and Emika. We don't know where we are. Bad people took us from Mama and Papa. They said we were going to school, but then, her voice broke. Kimmy felt rage building in her chest, the familiar fire that came when children were hurt by adult greed and cruelty. You're safe now, Adana. The bad people can't hurt you anymore. We're going to take very good care of you until we can find your family. Over the next few hours, Kimmy carefully coaxed the story from the children. They'd been taken from a village outside Lagos, promised education and opportunity in Korea. Instead, they'd been held in crowded rooms with dozens of other children, given minimal food, and told they owed money for their passage that would take years to repay. The warehouse where they'd been found was supposed to be temporary housing before they were moved to work sites. Construction, cleaning, begging on streets. The modern face of slavery, hidden behind promises of better lives. Kimmy called Jisu during her lunch break, her voice tight with controlled emotion. We need to talk. Tonight. It's about the children I told you about this morning. That evening, after Taehyun was asleep, Kimmy shared everything she'd learned. Jisu listened with growing concern, his business instincts immediately recognizing the scope of what she was describing. This isn't random, he said finally. Someone's running a sophisticated operation. International transport, local safe houses, coordination with corrupt officials. This takes resources and connections. I know, and I think I know who might be behind it. She pulled up news articles on her laptop, photos of a man in expensive suits cutting ribbons at charity events. Kim Jae-hwan, successful businessman and philanthropist, known for his work with international development programs and youth education initiatives. He looks familiar, Jisu said, studying the pictures. He should. He used to work with Chief Inspector Lim Do-hyun. Back when Lim was taking payments from both your organization and the Choi. After the investigations brought everyone down, Jae-hwan disappeared from the public eye for about a year, reinventing himself. Exactly. Now he runs a nonprofit called Bridge to Tomorrow. Officially, they help place disadvantaged youth in educational and work programs abroad. The perfect cover for trafficking. Jisu was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as he processed the implications. We can't get involved in this directly. We have Taehyun to think about. Our life, everything we've built. I know. But these children, Jisoo, they're the same age as our son. If someone took him, if he was alone and scared in a foreign country. She didn't need to finish the sentence. The thought of Taehyun in that situation was enough to make both their hearts race with protective fury. What do you suggest? We use legitimate channels. Your contacts in law enforcement, my position at the hospital. We build a case properly this time, through the system. And if the system fails, if Jaehwan has paid off the right people, covered his tracks too well, then we improvise. The investigation began carefully, methodically. Jisoo reached out to Detective Park Miho, one of the honest cops who'd helped bring down the corruption networks 2 years earlier. Miho had been promoted to head of the Human Trafficking Task Force, his reputation for integrity making him the perfect ally. Kemi worked with social services to document the children's testimonies, creating a paper trail that could be used in court. She also began researching other recent cases of abandoned children, looking for patterns that might indicate a larger operation. What they found was worse than they'd imagined. Over the past 18 months, dozens of children had appeared in hospitals, shelters, and detention centers across Seoul, all with similar stories of promises of education, journeys they couldn't remember clearly, and abandonment when they became too sick or difficult to control. The children came from multiple countries: Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, Cameroon. But the logistics suggested a single organization with international reach. Someone with the resources to coordinate across borders and the connections to move human cargo without detection. Jaehwan's nonprofit had offices in all the countries where children had disappeared. His educational placement programs matched perfectly with the timeline of trafficking cases. But proving the connection would require more than circumstantial evidence. We need someone on the inside, Miho explained during a clandestine meeting at a coffee shop in Hongdae. Someone who can document the operation from within. That's dangerous, Jisoo replied. If they're caught, if Jaehwan realizes he's being investigated. I know, but it's the only way to get the evidence. We need to shut this down permanently. Kemi set down her coffee cup with determination. I'll do it. Both men stared at her. Absolutely not, Jisoo said immediately. Why not? I have medical credentials, I speak multiple languages, I understand their target demographic. I'm perfect for the role. You're also a mother. Jisoo's voice was strained. Taehyun needs you. I need you. I won't risk losing you to this. And I won't let other children suffer when I have the power to stop it. Kemi's eyes flashed with the same fire that had first attracted him to her. This is who I am, Jisoo. I don't run from fights when innocent people need help. The argument continued late into the night, but in the end, Kemi's determination won out. The plan was simple in concept, terrifyingly complex in execution. She would apply for a volunteer position with Bridge to Tomorrow, using her medical background and language skills as qualifications. Once inside, she would document evidence of trafficking while maintaining her cover. Jisoo would provide technical support, surveillance equipment, and communication devices small enough to remain undetected. Miho would coordinate with international law enforcement agencies, building a case that could be prosecuted across multiple jurisdictions. The cover story was perfect. Dr. Kemi Adebayo, recent immigrant to Korea, passionate about helping African children adapt to life abroad. Her experience working with traumatized youth at Seoul Medical Center made her an ideal candidate for their counseling programs. Kim Jaehwan himself conducted the interview, his office decorated with photos of smiling children and certificates of humanitarian achievement. He was smaller than his picture suggested, with soft features and gentle mannerisms that would have been comforting if Kemi didn't know what lay beneath the facade. Dr. Adebayo, your application is impressive. Tell me, what draws you to our mission? Kemi had rehearsed this moment, drawing on real emotions to sell the lie. I came to Korea as a young woman seeking opportunity. I understand what these children face, the isolation and fear. I want to help them find hope in their new circumstances. And your medical background. Many of our children arrive with health issues, malnutrition, untreated injuries. My training allows me to assess their needs and ensure they receive proper care. Jaehwan smiled, and for a moment, Kemi could see how he fooled so many people. His warmth seemed genuine, his concern authentic. Only the coldness behind his eyes gave away his true nature. We have a group arriving next week from Lagos. University-age students, very promising. They'll need orientation, medical screening, emotional support as they adjust. Would you be available to lead their transition program? Of course. I'd be honored. That evening, Kimmy sat with Taehyun as he played with building blocks, her heart heavy with the knowledge of what she was about to undertake. The little boy looked up at her with complete trust, unaware that his mother was planning to infiltrate the same type of organization that had once threatened his own safety. Jisoo found them there, father and son, and knelt beside them on the carpet. "Appa, look, tower," Taehyun announced, showing off his architectural achievement. "Very impressive, buddy. You're going to be a great builder someday. Like you. Better than me. Much better." That night, after Taehyun was asleep, Jisoo held Kimmy close, both of them trying not to think about the danger ahead. "If anything goes wrong," he whispered into her hair. "If you feel unsafe for even a second, you get out. Promise me." "I promise." "But just so, this is our chance to stop them. To save those children and prevent this from happening to others." "I know. I just can't lose you. Not after everything we've survived to get here." "You won't lose me. I'm too stubborn to let some fake philanthropist take me down." Her joke fell flat in the darkness of their bedroom, but Jisoo squeezed her tighter anyway. The next week brought new nightmares. The group from Lagos consisted of 15 young people, ages 16 to 20, all bright and eager and completely unaware of what awaited them. They'd been told they were participating in an exchange program, that they would attend university classes while working part-time to offset their expenses. Kimmy met them at Incheon Airport, her heart breaking as she saw their excited faces, their neat clothes that parents had probably scraped together money to buy, their carefully prepared documents and dreams of success. "Welcome to Korea," she said in English, then repeated it in Yoruba and Igbo. "I'm Dr. Adebayo, and I'll be helping you settle in during your first few weeks." A young woman named Blessing stepped forward as their unofficial spokesperson. "Thank you, Doctor. We are so grateful for this opportunity. Our families are very proud." As they loaded onto the bus that would take them to their housing, Kimmy discreetly activated the recording device hidden in her medical bag. Everything from this point forward would be documented, building the case that would eventually destroy Jaewon's operation. The housing was the first red flag. Instead of the dormitory-style accommodations described in their orientation materials, the students were taken to a converted warehouse in an industrial district. The windows were barred, ostensibly for security, but Kimmy noticed the locks were on the outside. "This is temporary," Jaewon explained as confused murmurs arose from the group. "There was a plumbing issue at your permanent facility. You'll only be here for a few days while repairs are completed." But the beds were basic cots, the bathroom facilities minimal, the kitchen nothing more than hot plates and mini refrigerators. This wasn't temporary housing. It was imprisonment waiting to be revealed. Over the next few days, Kimmy watched the systematic breaking down of hope. The students' documents were collected for processing and never returned. Their cell phones were confiscated to prevent distraction during orientation. They were told their university classes would begin soon, but first they needed to complete work assignments to demonstrate their commitment to the program. The work assignments turned out to be 14-hour shifts in garment factories, cleaning services, and construction sites. The students were paid a fraction of minimum wage, told the rest was being held to cover their housing, food, and program fees. By the time they realized the truth, they were trapped without money, documentation, or means of communication. Kimmy documented it all. Photos of the cramped living conditions, recordings of conversations where Jaehwan discussed profits and quotas, financial records showing the true scope of his operation. She also provided what support she could to the students, sneaking them extra food, basic medical care for injuries sustained during their forced labor, and most importantly, hope that someone was working to free them. But the emotional toll was devastating. Each night, Kimmy returned home to her comfortable apartment, her healthy son, her loving husband, carrying the weight of 15 young people who trusted her but couldn't understand why she wasn't doing more to help them immediately. Taehyun noticed his mother's distress, the way she held him tighter during bedtime stories, the tears that sometimes escaped when she thought no one was looking. "Mama sad?" he asked one evening, his little hands patting her face. "Mama's thinking about some children who need help," she explained carefully. "But I'm going to make sure they're okay. Like when I have bad dreams." "Exactly like that." Sometimes grown-ups have to help other grown-ups with their bad dreams too. Meanwhile, Jisoo was conducting his own investigation from the outside. Using his connections in the legitimate business world, he traced Jaewon's financial networks, identifying shell companies and offshore accounts used to launder money from the trafficking operation. What he found was staggering. Bridge to Tomorrow was just one part of a larger criminal enterprise with tentacles reaching across 3 continents. The operation generated millions of dollars annually through forced labor, with children and young adults treated as renewable resources to be exploited until they were no longer useful. The timeline was critical. Detective Miho had received word that several government officials were growing suspicious of the investigation. If they didn't move soon, evidence would disappear and witnesses would be silenced. On a rainy Thursday evening, exactly 3 weeks after Kemi had started working undercover, everything came to a head. She was conducting evening medical checks on the students when she overheard a phone conversation that chilled her blood. Jaewon was speaking in rapid Korean to someone on the other end, discussing a shipment problem. 3 of the newer students were proving difficult to control, asking too many questions about when their university classes would begin. The solution was simple and brutal. Disposal protocols, he said matter-of-factly. Make it look like immigration violations. Have them arrested and deported, but route them through the Manila facility first. They can work the fishing boats for a few months before final processing. Final processing. Kemi's hands shook as she realized what that meant. These young people who'd come to Korea with dreams of education and success weren't just being exploited for labor. When they became too troublesome or too knowledgeable about the operation, they were being murdered. She activated her emergency signal, a medical alert device that would notify both Jisoo and Detective Miho that the situation had become critical. But as she prepared to leave the facility, she made a decision that would haunt her forever. She couldn't abandon the students. Not when disposal was scheduled for the next morning. Instead of waiting for backup, instead of following protocol, instead of thinking about her own safety or her family waiting at home, Kemi decided to act. Using her medical credentials to access the facility after hours, she gathered the 15 students in the main common area and told them the truth. Everything. The real nature of their situation, the danger they were in, and the plan to get them to safety. The reaction was what she'd expected. Disbelief, anger, terror, desperation. Some wanted to fight back immediately. Others were paralyzed by fear. A few accused her of lying, unable to process that their dreams had been built on such a foundation of cruelty. But slowly, as she showed them the evidence she'd gathered, played recordings of Jaewon's conversations, explained how the fake documents and false promises fit into a larger pattern of exploitation, they began to understand. Blessing, the young woman who'd thanked her so earnestly at the airport, was the first to speak. What do? We get you out of here. Tonight. Before they can implement their disposal plan. Where will we go? We have no money, no papers, nowhere to run. I have help. People who will protect you while we build a case to shut this down permanently. The escape was terrifyingly simple. Kemi had identified several weaknesses in the warehouse security during her weeks of observation. The loading dock had a blind spot in camera coverage. The guards changed shifts at midnight, leaving a 15-minute window when surveillance was reduced. Most importantly, her position as a medical volunteer gave her access to keys and security codes that other staff members trusted her with. At 11:45 that night, while Jaehyun slept in his comfortable home, believing his operation was running smoothly, 15 young people slipped out of their prison and into the Seoul night. Kemi led them through industrial alleys and back streets, using routes Jisoo had scouted during their planning phase. The destination was a safe house operated by Detective Miho's task force, a place where trafficking victims could be protected while their cases were processed. But they were only 3 blocks away from the warehouse when everything went wrong. Car lights flooded the alley behind them, engines roaring to life as Jaewon's security team realized their prisoners were missing. Someone had noticed the escape faster than anticipated, possibly through motion sensors Kemi hadn't identified. Run, she told the students. Keep going straight for 2 blocks, then turn left. There's a police station with officers waiting for you. What about you? Blessing asked, even as the others began to scatter. I'll hold them off. Buy you time to get away. It was a decision made from maternal instinct rather than strategic thinking. These were children, barely older than Taehyun would be in a few years. They deserve the chance to escape, to return to their families, to pursue the education and opportunities they'd been promised. Kemi positioned herself at the mouth of the alley, using a construction barrier as cover as 3 black SUVs skidded to a stop. Armed men poured out, their weapons drawn, their faces masked. She thought about Taehyun, probably sleeping peacefully in his bed, unaware that his mother was about to make the ultimate sacrifice for other people's children. She thought about Jisoo, who would never forgive her for taking this risk. She thought about all the patients she'd treated, all the lives she'd saved through medicine and compassion. But mostly, she thought about 15 young people running toward freedom, carrying with them the evidence that would destroy a network of suffering and save countless others from the same fate. The first shot shattered the construction barrier 6 inches from her head. "Dr. Adebayo," a voice called out in accented English. "Come out now and no one gets hurt. We just want to talk." She recognized the voice. One of Jaewon's lieutenants, a man who'd smiled at her during orientation meetings while planning the destruction of innocent lives. Instead of responding, Kemi activated her phone's emergency broadcast, sending her location and a distress signal to every law enforcement contact in her network. Whatever happened next, there would be evidence of who was responsible. The standoff lasted 12 minutes. Long enough for the students to reach safety. Long enough for Detective Miho's backup units to mobilize. Long enough for Jisoo to realize something had gone terribly wrong and race across the city in his own car. When the shooting started, it was brief and decisive. Kemi had no weapons, no training in combat, no way to defend herself against multiple armed attackers. But she'd bought the time she needed, and that was enough. The bullets caught her in the shoulder and abdomen, spinning her backward against the concrete wall of the alley. She slid to the ground, her medical training automatically assessing her own injuries even as consciousness began to fade. Shoulder wound was clean, probably not life-threatening. Abdominal injury was worse, possible internal bleeding, needed surgery immediately. She was still thinking clinically, still trying to solve problems and save lives, when Jisoo's voice cut through the darkness. "Kemi. Oh God. Kemi, stay with me." His hands were pressing against her wounds, applying pressure to slow the bleeding. His face was pale with terror, his carefully controlled composure finally shattered. "The students," she whispered. "Did they? They're safe. All 15, safe and protected. You did it. Taehyun. He's with Soyeon. He's safe too. Everyone's safe because of what you did." "Good. That's good." The ambulance arrived minutes later, sirens wailing as paramedics took over her care. As they loaded her onto the stretcher, Kemi caught sight of Detective Miho coordinating the arrest of Jaewon's men. The evidence she'd gathered, combined with the testimony of the rescued students, would be enough to destroy the trafficking network permanently. Children across 3 continents would be free because of this night. As consciousness faded, she heard Jisoo talking to the paramedic. "She's pregnant," he was saying. 6 weeks. Please, you have to save them both." Pregnant. Kemi tried to process this information through the haze of medication and shock. They'd been trying for another child, hoping to give Taehyun a sibling, but she hadn't confirmed it yet. Now there was another life at stake, another reason to fight for survival. The surgery took 14 hours. Jisoo spent that time in the hospital waiting room, Taehyun sleeping across his lap, surrounded by their chosen family. Sukmin had taken leave from his security job to provide protection. Wonbin and Soyeon had closed their restaurant for the day to be present. Detective Miho stopped by between coordinating raids on other trafficking sites. Dr. Sarah Kim, Kemi's supervisor from the pediatric ward, finally emerged from the operating room just after dawn. "She's stable," she announced, exhaustion clear in her voice. "We removed bullet fragments from her abdomen, repaired damage to her liver and intestinal wall. The shoulder wound was straightforward. She'll need time to heal, but she's going to recover completely." "And the baby?" Jisoo asked, his voice barely audible. "Heartbeat is strong. No signs of distress." Sometimes pregnancy actually helps in situations like this, provides extra motivation for the body's healing responses. Relief flooded through the waiting room like a physical presence. Taehyun stirred in his father's arms. "Mama okay?" he asked sleepily. "Mama's okay, buddy. She's going to be fine." When Kemi woke up 2 days later, the first thing she saw was Taehyun's face pressed against the hospital bed rail, his small hand holding hers. "Mama, you have Owie." Big Owie, she agreed, her voice hoarse from the breathing tube. But I'm getting better. Jisoo appeared at her other side, his eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion and worry. How do you feel? Like I got shot twice? She replied, then immediately regretted the joke when she saw his expression. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for putting you through this. Don't apologize. You saved 15 lives. You brought down an international trafficking ring. You're a hero. I'm a mother and a wife who took unnecessary risks. You're a woman who couldn't stand by while children suffered. It's one of the reasons I love you. They talked about the pregnancy, about the new life growing inside her despite the trauma she'd endured. They talked about the students, all of whom had been reunited with their families in Lagos. They talked about Jaehwan, now facing charges in multiple countries. But mostly, they talked about the future, about raising their children in a world where they'd made a difference, where their choices had protected innocent lives. 6 months later, Kemi stood in the delivery room holding her newborn daughter, Adana, named for the brave little girl who'd first told her about the trafficking operation. Taehyun, now a proud big brother, carefully touched his sister's tiny fingers. Family complete, he announced seriously. Almost, Kemi replied, looking at Jisoo. We need to talk to you about something important. That evening, they sat Taehyun down for a conversation that had been building for weeks. Do you remember the children Mama helped? Jisoo asked gently. The ones who needed a safe place to stay. Taehyun nodded. Bad people were mean to them. That's right. Well, 3 of those children don't have families to go back to. Their parents were hurt by the same bad people, so they need a new family. Kemi pulled up photos on her tablet. Adana, the girl who'd become the face of courage for her. Chaik, her younger brother who'd protected the smallest children during their captivity. Emika, barely 5 years old, who still woke up crying from nightmares. We'd like to adopt them, Kemi explained. Make them part of our family permanently. What do you think? Taehyun studied the pictures carefully, his expression serious beyond his years. They can share my toys. Is that a yes? Yes. Family helps family. The adoption process took another year of legal procedures, therapy sessions, and careful integration. But slowly, steadily, 3 traumatized children learned to trust again, to laugh again, to believe in the possibility of safety and love. Taehyun proved to be an exceptional big brother, patient with their fears, gentle with their healing, proud to teach them Korean while learning phrases in their languages. Jisoo expanded his security consulting firm to include a nonprofit division focused on protecting vulnerable populations. The foundation used his expertise in criminal operations to develop better prevention strategies and victim support programs. Kemi returned to work part-time at the hospital, specializing in treating trafficking survivors. Her experience, both professional and personal, made her uniquely qualified to help other families rebuild their lives. But it was the quiet moments that mattered most. Evening dinners around their expanded table, 5 children chattering in 3 languages while Jisoo tried to keep baby Adana from throwing food. Bedtime stories that blended Korean folk tales with Nigerian legends. Weekend trips to the park where their multicultural family drew stares of curiosity and approval. On the 2nd anniversary of the warehouse raid, Kemi received a video call from Lagos. Blessing, the young woman who'd served as spokesperson for the rescued students, was calling from her university dorm room. Dr. Adebayo, I graduated today. Bachelor's degree in international relations. I wanted you to be the first to know. Behind her, Kemi could see other familiar faces. The 15 students had all returned to Nigeria, all resumed their educations, all built the lives they'd originally dreamed of. I'm going to work with the UN, Blessing continued. Human trafficking prevention. Because of what you taught me, about standing up for others who can't protect themselves. That's wonderful, Blessing. I'm so proud of you. Will you visit us someday? Bring your family to meet ours. I'd like that very much. After the call ended, Kemi sat in the garden behind their house, watching Jisoo push Taehyun on the swing while the 3 adopted children played a complicated game that seemed to involve a lot of running and laughing. Baby Adana napped in her stroller, completely secure in her family's love. Some stories begin with violence and end with redemption. Others start with a cry for help and end with a family that spans continents. Theirs had both beginnings and both endings, proof that love could multiply instead of divide, that courage could be contagious, that choosing to help when help was needed, could transform not just individual lives, but entire futures. Kemi placed her hand on her stomach, where their third biological child was beginning to grow. 7 children total, she thought. From different countries, different circumstances, different dreams. But all of them safe, all of them loved, all of them proof that sometimes the best families are the ones you choose to create rather than the ones you're born into. The sun was setting over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that reminded her of the sunrise over Lagos where this story had really begun. Not on the airplane with a crying baby, but years before that, when a young woman decided to become a nurse so she could help heal the world's pain. That young woman had become a mother, a wife, a protector of children, a destroyer of evil systems, and finally, a woman who understood that heroism wasn't about dramatic gestures, but about daily choices to stand with the vulnerable against those who would exploit them. In the distance, church bells chimed the evening hour. Taehyun called out that he wanted to swing higher. Jisoo laughed and complied, sending their son soaring toward the darkening sky. The adopted children joined in the laughter, their fears finally replaced by the kind of joy that comes from absolute security. This was their life now. Complicated, chaotic, beautiful, real. Built on a foundation of choices made in crisis, but sustained by the simple, daily acts of love that make a family strong. Kemi closed her eyes and listened to the sounds of her children playing, her husband's gentle voice encouraging their adventures, the ordinary symphony of a life well lived. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new children who needed help, new opportunities to make a difference in the world. But tonight, in this moment, everyone she loved was safe and happy in home. And that was everything. What do you think about this complete love story? Share your thoughts in the comments and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one.